This is all Oregon grape here. This one, there's a use for the Oregon grape. They're real. Their leaves are real stickery. Here's the root of the Oregon grape. Can you get closer? Of the Oregon grape. This is the yellow dye that the Indian people used to you scrape the root, and you'll see that it's yellow. They used it, they cut the roots off, they dug mini roots, and they peeled them so that the yellow would be exposed. And they used it to, once they made this yellow solution, they soaked their porcupine quills in it. This was the yellow dye that they used, the roots of the Oregon grape. That is, you'll see how the root is yellow. My grandmother made much of this. We would pick a lot of the Oregon grape, and she would peel them and scrape the skin off of the roots and boil them, and it would turn yellow. That way she could, it turns real bright yellow. You boil them and the solution would be real bright yellow. But this is your dye for porcupine quills. Porcupine, using porcupine quills is really a sacred, you have to go through a sacred ritual. You just don't catch a porcupine and expect to do something with it. A lot of times he caught them alive and would throw a gunny sack over them, and that would pull the quills out that way with a gunny sack and turn them loose. But anytime my grandmother had to do quill work, she always had to burn pitch wood, the pine pitch. In that smoke, she would build a little fire and smudge herself. And then she could get her quill bundle out. The quill bundle was lined, it came from the intestines of a buffalo, and some people call it a honeycomb. That's the part that people eat from cows now. But inside that, the intestine, there's a round part that's called the honeycomb, and they peeled the skin off of it, and they dried it, and it lined their quill bundle. It was a sacred thing to have one made of buffalo. But all of her quill material went in there. Some people said because of the honeycomb shapes, that that's how you laid your porcupine quills when you were doing work. But that is your yellow dye. You can, they will get blueberries. They're very bitter, but some people make jelly with them. But that is your yellow dye. The Oregon grape, it grows usually in a high country, and it looks like one of the Christmas decorations that you get, holly, that has the sharp edges on it that you see at Christmas time, and it grows all over, and it can grow in real poor soil. But what my grandmother would do was, when she needed it, she had to do certain things.
uh, because it is such a sacred thing to do quill work. She had to be careful when we caught the porcupines. We didn't kill them. We usually roped them and drug them to the house, and then she threw a gunny sack over them, and she would pull the gunny sack off, and the quills would be stuck to it. And she would do this a number of times, and we would hold its tail down, and so we could pick some of the tall bristles off of the porcupine, the longer quills. But once we got it done, we turned the porcupine loose. But before her bundle was made with the lining of a buffalo. One of the guts, the lining of a gut, and it's what they you buy at the store now that they call I don't know, they boil it or steam it and it turns white. And that's what they make the manoodle with now. In stores, they use that same bag of guts what they would do is they would take the lining off of it and then they would put it into their quilling bag. Yeah, they lined their quilling bag with it. And my father used to say that they followed it had little squares on it. On this gut the skin had little squares on it. And he said this is how they had to line up their quill work, their quills. They didn't line them all up at the same pattern. They had to follow the pattern of that lining of the gut. But before she ever got started on it, she would put some pitch in the stove, some chips, and she would burn them. And then she would smudge herself with them. And we never bothered her during this time. We would watch her, but we didn't question her. And she would use a beating awl, and she would run it through her mouth to get a little saliva on it, and then she would draw the designs on the moccasins or whatever she was going to do quill work on. She used it to draw the marks where she was going to put her quills. And once she started, she would flatten them with she had a flattener that she flattened the quills with, and then she would fold them over. She would make a little loop and tie one end, and then she would fold it over. She would fold it a little bit and put another loop. So she continued to use one long quill and make a series of loops, and she flattened them out so they made a design. Before she prepared them, she had to cut the tips off of them. And she kept them in a little pile. Soon as she got done with them, she dug a hole in the ground and she buried them. They buried them, so it was just part of the ritual, because dogs would get into them and they'd get quills on their feet, and cats would the same thing. And when she would cut them, then she stuck them in a solution to dye them. And we only had two colors at that time. And one was yellow and one was red. And then the quill was white anyway. and then the tips of it is black. So those were the colors that they basically used to do their designs with. And one of the things that when we did find, we had to kill a porcupine, or sometimes they ate a porcupine, and they would cut the tail off and cut the quills off of the one side. There was only quills on one side. The other side was real stiff bristles. They cut the quills off and skinned it out and dried it, and then they put a stick inside of it and they beaded buckskin over the top of it, and it turned into be a hairbrush for the Indian woman. They used that tail for the hairbrush, and it is part of a ritual too. It has to be a woman that goes into a sun dance. She has to have this hairbrush. So anytime we find a porcupine that was run over on a road, we'll cut the tail off and fix it for them. That way they don't have to rush around at the last minute and look for it. They can we'll have it ready for them. It makes it easy because the woman is overworked anyway, and they have to they have so many things that they have to do, so we just give them the hairbrush, and they're always grateful. When they do cook a porcupine, it has a real pine taste, because porcupine, they live on pine trees. They eat the bark of a pine tree, so their flesh tastes of pine. So they will have to boil it and change the water about 6 or 7 times. And besides, it's really a tough meat. So once they skinned it and everything like that, we would change the water all the time and put it in fresh water and boil it again. And it took all day to cook. And usually the old ones were the only ones that ate it, because kids, we smelt it all day and we weren't very hungry in the evening. So they used to, a lot of the old people would come up when they heard we had a porcupine, and they knew my grandmother would cook it. So a lot of the old ones would come up, and they would eat porcupine. My grandmother would feed them porcupine. This not only honored her, because she was a quill worker. It was kind of like sharing her good fortune with them. And because she was a quill worker, there was a lot of things that people respected her for. She could bead certain things. She did a lot of beadwork. And being a keeper of a sacred teepee bundle, she was able to make certain designs on these teepees. And on these designs, she used quills. She used buffalo tail. She used different buckskin that she had tanned herself. She made these designs that they ornamented a teepee with. And when they did that, there were certain designs that were used for the bachelor teepee that she gave to her son. And there were several different lodges that she made, and each one was different. The designs had to be different. They represented something else. One was given to a girl, one was given to a young man, but the designs on them were different. And when she did this type of beadwork, no man could watch her. only the woman could, they would lock themselves in a shed and turn the light on. And they would, all the girls would help the grandmother sort beads or line up the quills, get everything ready for her. And she would, only the woman could see this process take place. The only thing that my mom shared with me was that it was such a sacred thing because no man could see it. See, my grandmother couldn't talk to men. She couldn't joke with them. And it was a real hard life for her because she couldn't visit with people like normal people would, where they would all talk together. Well, it wasn't the case in them days. She would just sit by herself, and we would have to go outside so that she could talk to her friend. If there was a lady friend that was there, we had to go outside. That way she could talk and listen to the news and stuff like that, and they had to share. But that's the Oregon grape. You can eat the berries, but they're real very sour. I see they talk about making jelly with them, but we don't use them for that. But once you dig the root, you dig a bunch and you peel them where they're bright yellow. That's when you boil them. You boil them and soak them in a little jar of water. You wait until it's the desired texture, the color, and then you can take the roots back out and soak your beads in it and dye them whatever color you wanted, or the yellow or the red. But that's the Oregon grape. They had to have a right mindset when they picked it. They couldn't be angry. They had to think of, my grandmother did a lot of praying to prepare herself. So she would try not to offend any of the spirits that might be around there. So it was, whenever we picked them, she usually went off by herself and dug them, and sometime her son would help her, or one of the kids would help her dig them up. But usually the only ones that prepared them were the girls. They would scrape them and get them ready for her. So that it was basically a girl thing. Boys didn't have no business around it. This is why it's so important that the woman take the role as a teacher when they're teaching the plants. It fits in with it. Their role as a teacher anyway, because they teach children. So it's a gift of the woman, and we've been teaching it because there was nobody else that wanted to. So now we're giving it to a lot of the young girls, and hopefully they're going to carry it out. They'll remember the Oregon grape.